Well, hello, Rice Lane. Great to be back with you on our assemblies once again. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a good week so far and you're enjoying being with your friends and learning so much together in school. Well, let's crack on with our assemblies. Remember our big theme, really important to keep this in our mind, is Jesus, rescue, and God's big story and God's big plan from the very beginning is that he will provide a rescue, and it will be through a child that will be born. We've gone a long way already in the Bible story, haven't we? We've looked at Adam and Eve in the garden. We've looked at the snake, and that God would bring someone who would be a serpent crusher one day and would defeat Satan, who is the picture of the snake. And we've talked about how things went wrong with Adam and Eve, how they went wrong with Cain, how they went wrong with Noah and the world and the flood, and after the flood how things still went wrong, and people then wanted to build a temple to show God that they were more powerful than him, and a tower up to the skies reaching into the heavens. Well, that's where we're up to in our Bible story, and where we come to next, and the video which we're going to see in a moment will tell us this, is to a man and his wife, a man called Abram, who was known as Abraham, and his wife called Sarai, who later became known as Sarah. We're going to see a short video which will tell a lot of things going on in the video, and then I'll just come back and try and sum up one or two little things to help us understand a bit further. And then we've got a really fun song to sing at the end. You might be able to do it. You might even be able to get up out of your seats and do a bit of the actions. I don't know. That will be up to your teacher. So let's have a little break. Let's pause. Here's the video, and then I will come back in a moment or two and we'll talk a bit more.
Chapter 3. Not too long after the whole tower business, God called a man named Abraham to leave his home and go to a new country. Actually, his name was Abram at this point, but everyone remembers him as Abraham. When God called Abraham, he made a lot of big promises. He promised to bless Abraham and to bless everyone who blessed Abraham. He promised to curse everyone who cursed Abraham. He promised Abraham a land and a child. God promised that Abraham would be the father of a great nation and that all nations would be blessed through him. Pretty much all the blessing that God wanted to give Adam and Eve, he promised to Abraham. And the best part? This time God was going to do everything himself to make sure Abraham got his blessing. You might think that God wanted to bless Abraham because he was such a swell guy. But Abraham didn't know God at all when God called him. And even after he got the call and all these promises, Abraham could still be a liar and a bit of a scaredy cat. Abraham's life had a lot of ups and downs, but he had two things going for him. The only two things, it turns out, that really matter. God's promise to bless him and Abraham's belief in God's promise. That's all Abraham had, which was a good deal because it was all he needed. At times, it looked as if God wasn't going to keep his promises to Abraham. For one thing, it was about 100 years before Abraham and his wife Sarah, who used to be called Sarai, had a baby named Isaac, who thankfully was always called Isaac. And then when the baby grew into a boy, God told Abraham to kill him. That must have seemed like a not-so-funny way to make a great nation out of Abraham. But Abraham listened to God anyway. And at the last second, God gave Abraham a ram to sacrifice instead of his beloved son. It was God's way of saying, I'll take care of the rescuing. Just trust me. Eventually, Isaac grew up, got married, and had some kids of his own. Twins, to be exact, Esau and Jacob. God picked Jacob to get the blessing, even though he was the younger brother and wasn't supposed to get the blessing. But God is God, so he gets to pick. Jacob had 12 sons, and this time it was the fourth son, Judah, who wound up with the best blessing. Jacob told Judah that a lion of a leader would come from his family. Great blessings, but not so great people. Isaac was sort of a weakling. Jacob was a selfish trickster. And Judah did such dumb stuff we don't even want to talk about it. And yet again and again, God kept his promises all the same. He blessed the whole lot of them despite themselves. Maybe the snake crusher would still come from the gnarled branches of the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob family tree.
So much going on in that story, isn't there? So many years that were covered in just those few minutes together. But here's the big thing that I want you to capture from our assembly today, is that God had now taken things into his own hands, if you like. Adam and Eve had failed. Cain had failed. The family had failed. Noah had failed. God says, now I am going to do it. I am going to be the one who will be the provider, will be the rescuer, and I will do it myself. And we heard in the story, didn't we, that Abraham had two things that were going for him, two big things. He made a mess of other parts of his life, which we haven't got time to see. But here's the two things. One was God's promise that he would bless him. Now, here's some of the promises that God made to Abraham. Quite amazing. He said this to Abraham: I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. And he even said, the number of people in your family will be greater than the number of stars in the sky and the sand on the shores. So obviously, it doesn't mean we need to count all the stars and the sand, but it just means the number will be massive. And this was a promise that God made to Abraham. He also said, Abraham, I will give you a land to live in. And he took him to that land, and Abraham lived there for a while. Then he moved to another country called Egypt. But Abraham said to his family, make sure when we go back to the promised land, to Canaan, that you dig up my bones and you take me back to that land and bury me in the land of Canaan. The only trouble was, for Abraham and his wife Sarah, they didn't have any children, and they were very, very old. But God miraculously provided a child. That's not a strange story to us, is it? We've heard that before in the Bible stories. God provided a child. And the second thing that Abraham had going for him, this was not only God's promise to bless him, but Abraham believed that God would do it. Even though he was so old, even though him and his wife had no children, that God was able to do these things. And as that story unfolds, as you saw on the video, a boy was born, Isaac. And God said a strange thing. And it is a strange thing, really, really strange thing for us to consider and think about it in our day and age. God said to Abraham, take your son, take him up a mountain, take some wood, put him on the wood, and sacrifice him to me. Of course, God didn't allow that to happen. He provided a ram, a male sheep, for the sacrifice. But here's the picture of that. Remember Jesus going up to Mount Calvary, carrying his own cross on a wood, and he was nailed there to the cross. And we're told that Jesus was God's lamb. So this picture of Abraham, Isaac, up a mountain, carrying the wood, a sacrifice, is meant to make us think of the promise that God made that one day a rescuer would come from the family of Abraham, and he will be the snake crusher. He will be the one who will defeat sin and defeat death. Now that story's still to come. But here's another bit of a picture of the Bible story, pointing us towards rescue, pointing us towards Jesus, who will save his people from their sins. And this child Jesus will come through the family of Abraham. Well, I'm going to pray for us in a minute, but before we do, here's a really, really fun song. Father Abraham had many sons and many daughters. And if we love Jesus, then we belong to the same family as Abraham did. So here's a fun song. Join in and then I'll pray. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you again for the children, staff and families of Rice Lane School. And as we have heard something more in our assembly about your rescue and your big Bible rescue plan and your big Bible story, we pray that you'll help us to give some thought to what it all means. Watch over us the rest of our day. Keep us safe throughout this week, we pray. In Jesus' name. Amen.